The weight of empty hands. What if I told you 3 generations of women in one family shared the same terrible secret? Breaking free would require doing the one thing that terrified them most: letting go. Sarah thought she was just cleaning out her grandmother's house, but then she found 17 identical purses, still in their shopping bags, expired toiletries from the 90s, furniture that hadn't seen daylight in decades. But what she found buried in those boxes would change everything she thought she knew about her family and herself. The discovery. Picture this. You inherit your grandmother's house, and you think you know what you're walking into. Maybe some old furniture, a few keepsakes, the usual stuff families leave behind. But when Sarah turned that key, she stepped into something completely different. The smell hits you first. That heavy, musty scent of things kept just in case, but never actually used. Then came the maze. Amazon boxes tacked to the ceiling, plastic bins labeled with dates from the 1990s. And there, lined up like soldiers on a shelf, 17 identical purses, still in their shopping bags, price tags attached. Sarah stared at her phone for the 3rd time that morning. The moving company wanted an answer about the dumpster size. Her boss was texting about deadlines, and her mom kept calling about grandma's china set, as if sorting through decades of accumulated stuff wasn't overwhelming enough. Everyone knew about grandma's collecting problem, but seeing it firsthand made Sarah's chest tight with anxiety. "What were you so afraid of, Grandma?" Sarah whispered. The pattern revealed. Sarah had come armed with garbage bags and a ruthless keep, donate, toss mentality. She even had a productivity playlist ready. But the house, it had other plans. Every drawer told a story Sarah recognized uncomfortably well. The kitchen pantry overflowing with expired canned goods, just like her own habit of buying multiples just to be safe. The closet full of clothes with tags still on, mirroring her own stress shopping binges. But then she found the box in the attic. Inside, meticulously organized receipts from 2008, every single purchase, even coffee, even gum, each one labeled with the date and reason. And there, on yellowed paper, a handwritten note that made Sarah's stomach drop. Never again. She thought about her own apartment, minimalist by Instagram standards, but hiding her own anxieties. 3 external hard drives backing up the same files. Emergency cash dashed in 4 different hiding spots. The panic attack she'd had last month when her favorite coffee shop discontinued her usual order. Sarah realized she wasn't just cleaning out a hoarder's house. She was looking at a family inheritance no one wanted, but everyone had received. Great-grandmother Eleanor, surviving the Depression, every penny saved is protection against tomorrow's hunger. Her mom, tracking every expense to the cent after Dad got laid off. And now Sarah, hoarding opportunities, achievements, approval. Always gathering more. Different generations. Same fear. Just different methods. The breakthrough. After 2 weeks of hauling boxes, Sarah was ready to give up. That's when Lena appeared, a woman in her 60s, pulling a bright blue cart, wearing a community exchange volunteer badge. "One person's overflow," Lena said, kneeling to examine a chipped teacup, "is another's breakthrough." Instead of judging the chaos outside Sarah's house, she knelt down and started gently examining what others saw as junk. Lena introduced Sarah to something called the Empty Hand Collective. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? Sounds pretty new agey, but their philosophy was surprisingly practical. You can't receive new opportunities if your hands are already full of old fears. Sometimes we hold on to things because we're really holding on to fears, hiding underneath the stuff. Lena explained, carefully wrapping that chipped teacup. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt like someone understood what she was really dealing with. This wasn't just about stuff. It was about the fears hiding underneath the stuff. The transformation. Lena became Sarah's unexpected teacher. She introduced her to other people who'd walked similar paths. Adult children dealing with inherited anxiety patterns, young professionals burned out from the constant hustle, retirees discovering freedom after decades of collecting security. And that's when Sarah discovered something amazing. Community was the antidote to scarcity thinking. When people actually share resources and support each other, there really is enough for everyone. Sarah started small. Those sewing supplies gathering dust, she donated them to a local arts program. Duplicate kitchen items she was keeping as backups, gone. Each release felt like a tiny rebellion against the family script that said safety came from accumulation. The breakthrough came with her mom's unfinished craft projects. Instead of feeling frustrated by the waste, she felt compassion. She picked up some fabric scraps and taught herself basic embroidery using YouTube videos. It wasn't about finishing what her mom started. It was about honoring the creative impulse without the pressure to be perfect. As Sarah's grandmother's house emptied, her own life began to fill differently. The Empty Hand Collective organized skill swaps, teaching each other practical things like cooking, budgeting, conflict resolution. Sarah taught project management and discovered she loved teaching. At work, she started saying no to projects that didn't align with her goals. Counterintuitive, right? But her performance actually improved. 6 months later, Sarah had sold her grandmother's house and moved into a smaller apartment she actually loved. She cleaned out her own space, donating clothes she'd kept just in case and books she'd bought to appear intellectual but never read. Each item she released made space for something better, more peace, more clarity, more authentic connections. The hardest part wasn't letting go of things. It was letting go of the anxiety that had driven 3 generations of women in her family. She kept only Eleanor's Riverstones, not as a reminder of scarcity, but of resilience. She learned to recognize the family voice that whispered, "Not enough," and respond with truth. "I have enough. I am enough. I can handle whatever comes." She learned a simple practice. When she felt the urge to accumulate, whether things, achievements, or approval, she'd ask herself, what am I really afraid of? Usually the answer was some version of not being enough. But instead of trying to fix that feeling by getting more of something, she practiced sitting with the discomfort until it passed. It was like emotional strength training, building her tolerance for uncertainty, her confidence in her own resilience. Her hands were finally empty, which meant they were finally free to create the life she actually wanted, not the one fear had designed for her. The living legacy. Sarah now volunteers with others dealing with inherited anxiety patterns. She shares her story not as someone who's figured it all out, but as someone who's learned that growth happens in small daily choices to trust rather than hoard. She thinks about Grandma Evelyn differently now, not as someone who failed, but as someone who did the best she could with the tools and fears she inherited. The family pattern wasn't a curse, it was a coping mechanism that had outlived its usefulness. Sarah's story proves that family patterns can be transformed in a single generation. All it takes is one person willing to examine the invisible inheritance and consciously choose a different path. Her empty hands had become her greatest strength, open to receive, ready to give, free to create a future unwritten by the past. The weight of what we carry is always a choice. The question isn't whether we inherit our family's fears. It's whether we pass them on. So I have to ask you, what invisible inheritance are you carrying right now? And what would it feel like to finally set it down?